Hi, I'm Lucy. I run a communications agency. I'm the closing session today, so I just thought I'd make it really easy. Today, I'm going to tell you a story, just a simple story. A story of a piece of technology that I've seen totally transform people's lives. Fortunately, I think I'm probably preaching to the converted here about virtual reality, but I want to tell you this story. So, my agency, we're a communications agency. We typically work with large corporate clients, so car companies, phone companies, people who produce complicated bits of technology. And our role really is to change behaviour. So we'll produce content and programs to make behaviour change. So let's say, for example, a car company that wants its sales staff to change the way that they behave with customers during that sales process. So they want a sort of fairly old-fashioned sales force to suddenly start using technology during, so an iPad or an app, during the process of selling the product to the customer. That requires quite a shift in behaviour. And so we produce all kinds of content and training programs to help people collectively across the country, or even multiple countries, make that shift in behaviour change so that the customer experience is consistent. So that's kind of typically the clients I work with. So it was really unusual for us a couple of years ago to be approached by a chiropractor. And this was actually a man with a great vision for what he wanted to do. And he wanted to develop technology and use that technology to change patient outcomes. And I'm sure that's a theme that many of you are familiar with. And he wanted to produce a suite of technology, and we helped develop that. The first of them is a virtual reality spine, which is really the story that I'm here to tell you today. The second one is actually an app, and the two go really neatly together. So the virtual reality spine allows people to understand what their problem is. So they put on the goggles and they can see their alignment. I'm going to explain that in more detail because it's having the most amazing impact on patients. The second piece of technology is an app. And what that means is that really it's an end-to-end technical solution so that you understand your issue and then you say, I need to change my behavior. I need to sign up. I need to say yes. I need to start my program of exercises, my adjustments, the things that are going to make a difference to my health. And the app will send you video reminders of your exercises, how to do them. So when you're with someone in the room and they've explained the exercise, and then you leave and you've completely forgotten what they told you to do, and it reminds you, come on, today, you're meant to be doing your exercises. It logs what you've done, it logs your pain, your medication, it even captures your x-rays. So in a sense, it's an end-to-end solution, but I'm here today to talk to you about the virtual reality element, the virtual spine that we've built for the chiropractors. So let's meet the protagonist in our story. I'm going to just play you a short clip of Matt talking about what was the problem? Why did we need to produce this in the first place?
Being able to show patients what's wrong and then the need to correct it and inspire them towards taking responsibility for their health has always been a bit of an issue because it's always been out of sight, out of mind.
So, what Matt's been doing for the last 20 years is explaining passionately to patients what's wrong with them using a 2D X-ray. Now, for a layman like me, I'm not a healthcare professional. I look at an X-ray, we see different things. He sees a much richer 3D, completely anatomically informed picture in his mind of what the problem is with the patient. But as a layman, as a non-clinical person, I don't see that. I just see a 2D picture with some lines on it and a shape. And that apparently represents me. And I nod and I sort of get it, but I don't really get it. There's a difference between evidence and understanding, and that's really what we're learning here. And we have been learning through this process. So Matt was passionately explaining why someone's alignment was wrong, I'm sure lots of you will know this far better than me, and of course I'm a layman, I'm not a clinician, so I'm going to explain this poorly, but I'm just going to explain it briefly. This isn't a talk about chiropractic, it's a talk about technology, but I need to give you just a few facts. Of course, Wendy will know all of this, but in layman's terms, really, to explain the story. So why should you care? Why should you care if your vertebrae don't do what they're meant to do, if they are misaligned? Well, the answer is, from my understanding, is you will get that slip disc, not just once. You'll probably get it several times in your life. People who are prone to back pain are prone to back pain. It's not self-limiting. You can take painkillers and suppress it, but unless you address the root cause, which is often structural, you will keep getting the same frozen shoulder, the same runner's knee, the same pain in your low back, the same damage if you don't correct the structure. And he's got a plan. He's got treatment plans that can help people through adjustments and exercises over time to retrain those muscles and ligaments and pull your spine back again to lift you so that you can even regain the height that you've lost. And all kinds of ways you can make a massive difference to your health so that you're not lying, I've seen people in terrible pain in the clinic. They're hobbling up the stairs, they're off work, they're depressed, they've gone off their food, they can't pick their children up, they can't earn an income. And what he was struggling with is that he had the answer. He had the answer. He knew it, and it was there in an X-ray. So he's got someone in the room, in pain, and he's got a diagnosis and a plan that could help them change their lives forever. And they still weren't saying yes. Only 50% of people, even in that scenario, who voluntarily put themselves into this situation were saying, sign me up for a treatment plan, I understand what's wrong with me, and I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to stick to my exercises. Compliance, massive issue, of course, across healthcare. So then he started to run training workshops for patients. He so passionately believes that training and education is what makes a difference to people saying, I'm going to take responsibility for my health and I'm going to make the difference that will get me out of pain, potentially for life, if I follow and use the skills that I'm given. It still wasn't enough. He was delivering these brilliant workshops with video content and case studies and models, and he was passionately explaining to people what was wrong with them. They were sat in the room, again, in pain, with a diagnosis. He was telling them what was wrong with them and how to fix it. And they still weren't saying yes, only about 50%. So he felt that it was a very, very serious issue. So we developed a virtual reality spine. And I want to show you that. What is it? So we didn't just develop one spine, we developed two. What you can see, this is sort of video capture of what a patient experiences. So the spine that's not lit up is the ideal spine. It's really what we'd all look like in a perfect world, the way that we'd be aligned. And the one next to it is, in effect, your spine. So they take your x-rays and they drag every vertebra to exactly the alignment that your body's in. And they highlight the areas of damage, so where you've got different phases of osteoarthritis, and you see, compared with where you're meant to be, what you're at. And it is having the most amazing impact. I have seen a woman shout, scream across the practice through several walls to her husband in the waiting room, you've got to come and see this. You've got to see this. They finally, I've been interviewing patients, and they say to me, finally, I understand what's wrong with me. I've seen specialists for years, I've had all kinds of issues, assessments, and over the years, I finally understand it. I saw for myself an x-ray of a man whose pelvis was an inch out of line, and I saw the x-ray, and of course I felt very sorry for him, and I thought, well, it's a bit of a shame, I'm sure it's a bit of a bummer, isn't it? It's probably going to impact your life negatively, it's not great. Oh, I'm sorry. I walked into the next room, I put the goggles on, and I saw the same person, the same alignment, but in virtual reality. I looked around and saw how it completely screwed him. I mean, he was completely twisted, and you thought, and there was the same output, the same person's records, just shown in different ways. And I took the goggles off and said, where is he? We've got to call him, we've got to help him, you've got to help this poor man. It was interesting that lots of talks today have been about compassion and empathy and what it brings out in you. And when you see this full-size person in front of you that's actually representing you, you feel empathy towards yourself. It's so bizarre. You actually want to take care of yourself and make a difference. And so now, it's extraordinary, over 80%, something like that, of patients, it's only been in there for 5 months, but the uplift has been extraordinary in terms of people signing up and saying, yes, I understand what's wrong with me, and I'm going to sign up for a plan of care. And then in walked Yvette Caldicott.
The work that Back to Health have done with their virtual reality I think is absolutely fantastic, and I can see how that will really help me to allow my patients in the pain clinic to adapt their behaviour. And what the reason for that is that the ability for an individual who doesn't have an in-depth medical understanding or an anatomical knowledge to be able to see really in a 3D way what a normal spine would look like and what their own personal spine looks like if that's programmed in alongside, with the educational tools to help them to understand what modifications they can make, which ones will actually really help to change their pain and which ones are probably not causing them too much disturbance and they don't need to worry about. Now, for people to have that understanding will really help them to make those changes and make those modifications.
So Yvette comes from obviously a traditional clinical medical background as opposed to the chiropractic world, which sits in the sort of holistic natural health care. They're trying to use hands and not resort to surgery and pills and things. Usually the two are very separate. Finally, this is the bridge. This is where they're overlapping. It feels to me like a really exciting space. And I hope I'm not misquoting Yvette. I think, well, I'm not quoting her, I'm sort of praising. I think, to be honest, she's sick and tired of handing out pills and drugs and injecting people, to put it in very bluntly, unnecessarily. Because actually, if people understood what was wrong with them, made the changes that they need to make to their lifestyle, or stuck to an exercise program or a regime or something that could make a change to them, they wouldn't need all these drugs. Pain relief medication increases heart attacks. 8 out of 10 adults are getting back pain at some point in their life. The strain on the NHS is extraordinary, and the damage on people's lives is extraordinary. So if we can make a difference with this, that's really, really exciting. So I think the first thing that I wanted to, the conclusion that I drew coming from a corporate sort of training communications background was very much that this improves understanding. I've seen it. Patients saying, I understand what's wrong with me for the first time. That's got to have massive impact on training and communications within the corporate world. It's a waste of money spending on training if people don't understand it. The spine has got something like 720,000 different misalignment patterns. This is a very complex product, if you like, and we've managed to make it simple through virtual reality. People understand it. So when when I'm talking to corporate clients with a very complex product, let's take a car engine or an aeroplane or a boiler or a piece of software, there is very little that's more complex than the spine. So this has got really, interesting applications. I then wanted to understand, not just what, not just seeing the difference, but really why. And of course, there's people with qualifications in this in the room, which is very exciting. So I've been working with Kingston University to understand why. Why is this having this impact? What's happening in people's brains? And I know that's been the subject of some of your talks too today, which has been brilliant to watch. The interesting thing, of course, in a corporate communications world is that I know that different media have different impact on the brain and on the people that you want, on the message that you're delivering. So if, for example, you want someone to be quite emotionally engaged with your message, you often use video. You relax into it, you feel like you're watching telly, or there's lots of things that go on in, with music and sound and video. You go into relaxed passive mode. If you want people to remember 3 specific facts, it's read, learn, repeat, apply. There's a difference. You wouldn't run a kind of experiential day for certain types of training. So I knew that you pick the message, the medium, but why is this having such an exciting impact? So we spoke to a brain scientist at Kingston University, and this is what she said.
One of the reasons why virtual reality may enhance learning is that it makes people learn through a more vivid and rich visual image, and that has been shown to improve memory as compared to a situation where the visual image is poor in terms of content, like an X-ray.
So really what she was saying when I spoke to her in more depth is that, of course, this very rich content, you put goggles on, quite often the content's quite poor. In this case, you put the goggles on, the content's rich, there's lots going on, and it's also about you, let's face it. Everyone loves to see themselves. So this is the most exciting, most engaging environment. She's saying the richer the environment, the more the brain has to base memories on. So if we know that this virtual environment and this kind of mechanical exploration increases understanding and increases recall and has high impact, surely we should be using it in the corporate world for training, or in any environment for training, of course. But the last thing that I thought was the most significant, that could have a massive impact on corporate training, and I'll come on to the applications of that in just a moment as I sum up, is consequences. So a lot of you have talked about that as well. The great thing about a virtual world is that you can safely explore unsafe consequences. So chiropractors can't say this, of course, because their industry is very regulated, but I can. I actually was a patient. I experienced it as if I was a patient and have been a patient, so I understand. I put the goggles on and I saw what I should look like in an ideal world, and then I saw what I do look like, which was really quite alarming, and I can now understand why I've been having problems left, right, and centre, and I'm now sticking to my exercises. And I asked the question, but what will happen if the damage gets worse? What could happen to me? And they have to be very careful with that. I just said, well, what could? Theoretically, what could happen to me? When you see yourself hunched over in a right old state with osteoarthritis lit up all down your spine, believe me, you don't forget it. It stays with you. We all know that, unfortunately, fear is a bigger driver to behaviour change than pleasure. There's lots of evidence out there to show that pain and fear do change behaviours. Now, obviously, it would be great to have a kind of motivating, positive scenario if possible. But you know what? If that makes the change, if that makes you make the change and you really, really change your life, then so be it. And for me, the best application for corporate training is something like someone producing a new car engine or a new aeroplane engine or a boiler or a piece of software. This is the kind of people that I work with all the time. And typically what happens is, so we might produce an e-learning module or a quiz, or we might produce at the bigger end, an enormous event. We might gather people from all around the country or around the world to experience a training environment, some sort of immersive experience. And generally, the more you spend on it, the more you invest in it, the more you move people around and give them some incredible experience, the better the outcome. If I'm honest, they're going to remember it more. That's not smart use of money anymore. We're not in a world, I think, where we can afford to be lavish. We need to be thinking about smarter ways to use technology to get the better outcome. And we've got to be delivering, as agencies, better value to our clients. And to me, if you were launching a new car engine, yes, maybe once you need to gather everyone together to train them on how to use it. But the second, the third, the fourth version of that engine, the third new feature, that's actually a minor modification. Is it really worth flying all those people around the world to see that in the flesh? Or actually, should we be pushing content? Is it smarter, more cost-effective, and actually impactful to push the content out to them? So let's take, for example, aeroplanes. Say you've got 300 technicians around the world. You've got a fault with an aeroplane. They've all been grounded. Everyone needs to consistently make the same update to that engine technology. And really, you really need them to understand it. No one wants to make a mistake on that. And you really want them to get it right, and you want them to remember, then this is a great solution for that, for corporate training. And of course, with consequences, playing it to its extreme. And this is, I am pushing the point, I know, but in a virtual world, I can say to someone, I can show them, if you get this cable and you put it in that socket, they're going to remember that, right? That's going to stick with you, like me with my, hunched spine and my osteoarthritis. Okay, so maybe when you're in the real world and you're about to stick the wrong cable in the wrong, maybe you'll pause because your recall and your understanding was so much better thanks to virtual reality. So I'll just talk about the next steps. There's two next steps for the chiropractors. So for Matt and his team working with mine, the next step is actually a muscular overlay to be used with physiotherapists and range of motion. So the spine, showing why you're doing a terrible tennis serve or why your motion isn't right, and which muscles light up, and therefore what the work needs to be done, what exercise program you need to do to make those changes and make that better. And in terms of Blueprint as an agency, so we're the agency developing the technology, I'm looking for the innovators. I'm looking for corporate clients who want to make a legacy, really, at their organisation, people who want to halve their training budget or speak to their customers or their technicians or their salespeople in a whole new way, in a much smarter way. So if that's you, come visit our stand. We're Blueprint. We're down in the main tent on the right as you come in. Thank you very much for your time.